On May 20, 1498, three heavily weathered Portuguese vessels dropped anchor off the coast of India. The men on board were exhausted, starving, and scurvy-ridden. But these struggling sailors were about to initiate a hostile takeover of global trade that would last for 4 centuries. This is the breakdown of how the world's oceans were weaponized, all in a 5-minute explainer. In the late 1400s, Europe was desperate for Asian spices. But the Mamluk Egyptians, Ottomans, and Venetians maintained a highly taxed chokehold on the Red Sea. Facing this solid economic wall, Portugal gambled on charting an entirely unknown route around the southern tip of Africa. This voyage was a desperate military flanking maneuver designed to break a global economic siege. That arrival in the Indian port city of Calicut was deeply awkward. Da Gama and his men were completely ignorant of local culture, to the point where they actually prayed in Hindu temples because they mistakenly believed they were Christian churches. Then came the diplomatic insult. Da Gama tried to present the Zamorin, the wealthy and powerful local ruler, with pathetic, low-value trinkets, striped cloth, coral, and cheap hats. The Zamorin was profoundly offended. The entrenched Arab merchant class, who already controlled the regional ports, quickly capitalized on this tension. They sabotaged any Portuguese attempts to establish a foothold, eventually forcing Da Gama to sail home without a solid trade treaty. As this map's web of navigational rum lines across the Indian Ocean proves, the voyage was still an intelligence triumph. Da Gama had gathered the data required to prove a maritime route to this theater was viable. But the mission also revealed a structural problem. Europe had virtually no manufactured goods that the wealthy Indian markets actually wanted. Since they couldn't compete on equal terms through trade, the Portuguese crown decided to use their superior naval artillery to seize the market by force. When Da Gama returned to India in 1502, he brought a heavily armed armada of 20 ships. His orders were no longer to negotiate. He was there to terrorize the Malabar coast into submission. To demonstrate this shift, he intercepted the Miri, an unarmed merchant ship carrying hundreds of Muslim pilgrims. Da Gama looted the vessel and then burned it to the waterline with everyone trapped on board, a calculated act of psychological warfare. This terror campaign was soon institutionalized by the viceroys who followed, like Francisco de Almeida and Afonso de Albuquerque. Their explicit job was to build a permanent, heavily armed footprint in the region. Look at this historical drawing of the city of Coxim. The Portuguese rapidly erected these dense, walled fortifications and cannon placements right on Indian soil to project their naval power inland. By erasing the region's long history of relatively free trade, Portugal transformed the Indian Ocean into an active war zone governed by naval artillery. The breaking point came in 1509 at the Battle of Diu. The Portuguese navy clashed with a joint resistance fleet made up of Egyptian, Gujarati, and Venetian forces and decisively defeated them. With the sea cleared of rivals, Albuquerque implemented a new strategy. Instead of trying to conquer vast inland territories, the Portuguese military would only target the ocean's narrowest exits. They rapidly captured 3 maritime choke points: Goa in 1510, Malacca, and Hormuz. To monetize this, they introduced the cartaz, a mandatory pass. Every merchant ship had to stop at a Portuguese port and pay duties. Ships without one were seized, their crews executed. The Portuguese had built the legal and military prototype for the modern maritime monopoly. Ultimately, that ragged arrival back in 1498 achieved exactly what the Portuguese crown wanted. It completely bypassed and slowly strangled the economies of the Ottoman and Venetian empires. Da Gama's landing laid the permanent groundwork for 4 centuries of European imperialism in Asia. Yet, as carved into the stone of the monument to the discoveries, this violent invasion is often remembered as a glorious national myth. May 20th, 1498 marks the pivot point where the center of world trade began moving out of the Mediterranean and into the global oceans. If you want to understand the geopolitical shifts that built the global economy, subscribe for more 5-minute explainers.